Wakanda forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. So, what did I think of Black Panther, Wakanda Forever? Well, I think it did go on for forever, but it's a bit of a mixed bag. There were things I really liked and things I really disliked. And I think ultimately, this is probably the first Marvel film that I've actually been quite bored in the middle and felt, could it rush to the third act and something big explosion and stuff in the sky? That's probably not what some of you would expect, and I'm sure some of you will want to revoke my black card, but I've got to be honest, that's what I thought. And I'm someone who really dug the first Black Panther and was kind of really looking forward to this movie. So far, I think that the MCU Phase 4 has been a bit of a ball drop. If I'm honest, it's not been a slam dunk in any way, shape or form. There have been movies that I've liked, movies that I've been at best thought were okay, but nothing of the level of the first couple of phases, and up until the ultimate showdown in Endgame, it's not quite been able to scratch that surface. I think the best movie, Spider-Man No Way Home, is kind of a split custody really between Marvel and Sony, and I think Sony probably really pushed for the product to be the best that it possibly could. That's the only way I can explain why some of the rest of the Phase 4 Marvel movies have been a little bit lacking, a bit lackluster. Okay, so my thoughts on Black Panther. The first movie, I really dug it. I didn't think it was the masterpiece that so many people are going on about. I am a Marvel Comics fan. I'm not the most encyclopedic Marvel Comics fan. I didn't read everything. I was particularly an X-Men and Fantastic Four kind of guy. But I knew of Black Panther, particularly because he featured a lot in the Fantastic Four and he dated Storm, one of the X-Men. So that kind of crosses those two franchises quite neatly. I thought it was I was really looking forward to seeing Black Panther as a character jump into the screen. I remember when everyone was saying, Kevin Feige, where's T'Challa? You've got everybody else. Where is the Black Panther himself? And there were some teases. And I'm old enough to remember when Wesley Snipes back in the day was trying to get a Black Panther movie off the ground. This was way before the MCU. And he settled with Blade, which he did a good job of that character, by the way. So there was a lot of talk, a different John Singleton, I think as a director, was thinking about doing a Black Panther film or wanted to. There's so many projects that were off the ground, until finally in the MCU, Kevin, after assuring fans it was coming, made the major announcement that it was greenlit and it was on the slate. And of course, I only went and got Ryan Coogler, who was one of the hottest black directors out the gate at the time. Fruitvale Station, Creed, which I really loved, by the way, loved Creed. So the movie came out. I wore my African garbs. I think people wearing dashikis and native wear all across cinemas where there was a large black population. And it was loved by not just the black community as a movie that had been not seen before. Afrofuturism, black folk, African pride on a multi-million-dollar budget in one of the biggest franchise makers in the world. It was given a great platform to shine. It showed the best of fictitious, but with some real world elements of black culture, African culture specifically. You had great acting, some of the best black actors in the industry, people like Angela Bassett, the late great Chadwick Boseman, Michael B. Jordan. I could go on and on. It was a real showcase of talent, of culture, of everything great. Plus a comic book character that had been waiting to see make his debut and to see the light of day, essentially. Black Panther deserved to be on the big screen, and it was a fantastic debut. Now, the movie wasn't perfect. Third act, dodgy CGI aside, it kind of was a great introduction. It was a great movie outside of the Marvel staple because it did deal with issues such as culture, the African experience versus the African American experience, the sense of isolationism. Why did Wakanda, let's say, other African nations suffer throughout history when it was sitting on not a gold mine, but a vibranium mine, and all that kind of deep, heavy stuff? Plus a lot of elegance and cool, epitomized by its lead actor, Chadwick Boseman, who was amazing. He debuted the character first in Captain America Civil War with that great kind of intro into the MCU, fighting the Winter Soldier, taking on some of the Avengers, particularly, I think, Cap's side, just kicking ass, and really introduced the character in a great way. But of course, a lot of people enjoyed the movie who were not comic book guys or MCU fans like me. It was a great gateway into a whole world or a whole nation, Wakanda, that was universally kind of loved. They loved the movie in Korea. It was loved in countries that there wasn't a black population. It was that much of a crossover. But again, it was an amazing movie. I don't think it was necessarily an Oscar movie, though it did get some noms. I wouldn't have hated it to have won something, taken home a gold statue or two, but hey. So that's just to assure you that I am black. And I did like Black Panther. I almost loved the first one. Like most of the world or those who follow entertainment, I was very shocked at the passing of Chadwick Boseman, and I was gutted. Such a young age to die, to succumb to cancer. I believe he was 43 or 44. He hid it from his colleagues. To think that he was filming the first Black Panther whilst suffering with cancer, whilst taking chemotherapy, and to think of all the stunt work and all the action that he did, it boggles the mind. Such respect for him, and the fact that he really wanted to leave a legacy for that particular character, Black Panther, aka T'Challa, not just a superhero, but an African king, a regal monarch of a highly advanced, aspirational African nation. And that kind of leads me to my kind of hopes and expectations for a sequel. As tragic as Boseman's passing was, and people were thinking, how the heck do we make another Black Panther movie? We're still getting over his passing. I personally think that Chadwick Boseman would have wanted the character and the legacy he built through pain and suffering to have continued. So I guess cards on the table, I was in the recast T'Challa camp. Not those ones that are very vocal and aggressive and sort of was against Marvel. I understand why they made the play that they did. Ryan Coogler was very close to Boseman, as was most of the cast, and I get that they wanted to honor his legacy. And you see that there are different camps. You had the Fast and the Furious movie that had some of its actor, its lead actor in it, whose name escapes me right now. Apologies for that. Where there was some footage filmed, so they used his brothers to finish and some CGI to finish that off. That was a very different situation. The same with the Rise of Skywalker, the third of the sequel trilogy. Carrie Fisher filmed none of that, but her character was so pivotal. Some were saying recast Princess Leia, but that's like, she'd played that role she'd been associated with that character for over 40 years. It wasn't really going to work to suddenly have a new actress play that character. So you could have just not had her in the movie, but they decided to rejig some footage from previous movies, outtakes, to do it, which was mixed results. With Boseman, it was neither that he filmed anything to continue because he passed way before, and he hadn't had decades worth of association with the character. The character existed in comics years before the movie version, and the actor played the role. So there was an argument that they could have recast it, and I think there was a period of time to have mourned Boseman, to have kind of gotten used to the idea. And I think what they could have done, they could have introduced the character, the new actor, in a Disney Plus show, have him guest appear to get used to the idea, and then by the time you bring a movie, it's not so much of a shock to the system to see another actor step into that suit. But here we go. That's just my thoughts. But I put all of that aside to say I gave Black Panther Wakanda Forever a chance, in spite of thinking they went in the wrong direction. An understandable one, difficult choice, but one that I wasn't really feeling. There was rumors that Shuri was going to be the Black Panther, and because it happened in the comics. So this is going to be spoiler free up front, and then I'll get into spoilers at the end, just to give you a warning there. So I'll try and be as spoiler free as possible. So what did I think of Wakanda Forever? I weren't really feeling it, folks. I'm sorry. Black card, here you go. I give my Black membership to community up for this. It just wasn't really slamming. There were moments in it that were great, but it didn't feel like this was a Ryan Coogler movie, strangely. In places, Coogler has a lot of cool and swag and a certain grit and depth and high energy. This film was very plodding. It was very slow. It took its time, especially in the middle. There were a lot of lingering shots, a lot of contemplation, a lot of characters just emoting, which if you're into that, I'm sure you would have enjoyed it. And I think if you were really going in, if you cried at the trailer and you really wanted to grieve both Chadwick Boseman, the actor, and the character T'Challa, perhaps you were susceptible to this, that you would really go along for the ride. If you kind of dealt with that and you wanted to kind of see them touch on it because they made that decision, but kind of go somewhere interesting, I think you might be a bit disappointed. I didn't like the way they handled T'Challa's death in it, in terms of how he passed and how they kind of responded to it. It felt very rushed. It kind of made Shuri pivotal. Again, you see this in the trailers. She's kind of pivotal in the movie, and I think hats off to Letitia Wright. She did a fantastic job. In fact, all of the acting was top notch. Give all the awards to Angela Bassett and then to Letitia Wright, because they really brought their A game. There wasn't really any bad acting in this movie. The performances are great. It's just the material and the direction they took with the characters I had some problems with. I think Shuri was a fantastic side character to Boseman's T'Challa in the first movie. She was like the fun, cute, cool kid sister, and their chemistry was fantastic. While she is brilliant in this role because she's given a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of emoting to do, I think it was the wrong play for the character. It kind of stripped everything we loved in her character and kind of made her burdened with this sort of one note kind of grief mode that kind of was hard for her to shake. The same with Bassett. Once you've seen the trailer and her speech in that, you just got a lot of that throughout the movie, that kind of raw fierceness, but it kind of got a little bit one note because every character's kind of playing the same kind of vibe. The whole movie's playing the same kind of instrument note that I felt was just a little bit intense and a little bit too much. Not that I don't like serious movies. I like my best movies are from the 1970s, and they were pretty much kind of downers, really. But at least it said something interesting. It did something new. It did something cinematically interesting. It did something. It went for high stakes. This felt a little bit to me indulgent in the emotion, maybe a tad manipulative. Let's go for the good. I really like the acting. Again, I liked some of the visual effects set pieces. Namor, sorry. I quite liked the actor who played him. I think it took me a while to get used to the kind of the cultural decision they made for Namor, because in the comics he wasn't that, and these people weren't that. And I guess they wanted to give them a particular ethnic, cultural background because they went all in with Wakanda. So I think they wanted to give another people group a sense of heritage and pride and celebration, even if it kind of felt a little bit weird. The direction with Namor, he was a badass in scenes. You really see he's like the comics. They made the flying work and not appear silly. His fight sequences were pretty cool. The fact the character's a bit of a douche in the comics, even where he's an anti-hero. He can be okay and he can be very unlikable. I think they really nailed that, or the actor nailed that side of Namor. Yeah, the visual effects were improved from Black Panther 1. There was no real dodgy computer game animated CGI in this one like there was in the third act of the last one. They at least committed to taking the source material seriously with the concept of grief. I give them an applause for really making a decision and sticking to it and saying, we're going to go all in on this. There's no way you come away from the movie and feel like they disrespected the late Chadwick Boseman, or that they just were very frivolous with it. Though I do feel that, having said that, I still feel the way that they dealt with him at the beginning and how T'Challa, Black Panther, dies. It's not a spoiler, it's in the trailer. And then they make another decision that I feel kind of bogged the movie down and almost compromised the weight of that by adding another element. That was problematic. I'm kind of running out of the good, if I'm honest. Now, the not so good or the bad. There's nothing outright bad in this movie, from my opinion, except for it didn't feel like there was much energy. It felt flat, especially in the middle. There were scenes that just dragged on and weren't relevant. I felt it was like telling us what's going on rather than assuming that we just can pick it up and just run with it. I felt the under the sea stuff just felt a little bit like it was taking its time, and then some decisions didn't make sense. There was quite a number of plot holes that I'll have to wait maybe to go into in the spoiler section. Yeah, I just didn't feel after the movie that I wanted to see it again. I didn't feel like, yes, I had a great time, I want to see it again. I felt like, well, that was interesting. And I'd like to sort of snip and cut bits from the movie and watch certain sequences again, but not the whole movie again. Like, no, please. By the time of the end of the movie, I wanted to be deported from Wakanda. Kicked out with my suitcase. So overall, I felt it was a noble effort, but it had a massive T'Challa Boseman-shaped hole, which was inevitable. I think it drew attention to the hole. They tried to make the absence of the character and the actor a kind of central part of the movie and a catalyst for everything that happened. But for me, it just reminded me, especially of the absence of his charisma, the absence of the actor, the absence of that character, where I think you made that a feature of the movie. I know, to honor all the above, but for me, it just showed the shortcomings of what was really lacking and missing in the movie. And perhaps with another actor in it and a storyline that didn't focus on, look here, look. Perhaps they could have got away with it. So now, a little bit of spoilers. I don't understand why they tried to make Namor and Shuri kind of tied by what they're experiencing. But it didn't really make sense. It didn't make sense why Shuri was so mad at the world, because ultimately, I thought, again, this is spoiler territory, I thought that T'Challa would have maybe died trying to save the world, or maybe when he made that announcement that he's opening up Wakanda to the rest of the world, that it'd come back to bite him, at the end of the first movie. So then Shuri is upset, not just with his death, but the fact that it was because he took a noble stance and somehow the world struck back at him. But no, it seemed it was a mystery illness that she couldn't cure, so she was angry. Where they were trying to make the whole, she wants to see the whole world burn, but it didn't seem like it made sense. Because people die and they die of illnesses, and it wasn't like a sudden thing, it was something that happened. And I think it kind of got a bit too close to home, because obviously Boseman had his cancer and the cast and crew, and a lot of people didn't know about it. So there's an element of him keeping it from people, and it was a surprise, and the thin line between fiction and reality, I think that was a bit dodgy. But I didn't feel it was a strong enough catalyst for Shuri, especially 1 year later, to be so angry. I thought there'd be some exploration of her being a progressive versus the traditions. There wasn't much of that. Wakanda coming out, Tolakan coming out of nowhere with Namor and his people seemed a little bit random. I thought they would have had some history, or they would have known about the nation. So there's a lot to pack into one movie, an introduction and a fight and the potential for them to be allies in the future. It just seems a lot. So it felt like that's why the movie was so long, but it just bogged it down. There was also a little bit of, I believe, maybe political subtext, African Americans or Black Americans and Latinos in America. There's kind of this sort of political, on the Democrat side, kind of coalition between the two groups, which sometimes is fraught with tension. And I felt like the subtext of the movie, even though they were pitted against each other, and I think a wrong reading of the movie, someone said, it's almost like saying blacks and Latinos or Hispanic people are at loggerheads, and it's almost like it's gonna create tensions. In fact, I found it the opposite. The subtext of the movie, to me, my take on it was, why are we fighting when the common enemy is the colonizers, the Americans? America literally is the bad guy, the true villain of this movie, which I think, whoa, that's quite deep for an American major capitalist empire like Disney to basically saying, yeah, white America is pretty much the bad guy. The colonizers. And they make that joke over again, a bit too much again, with Martin Freeman's character calling him a colonizer again. I'm like, let it go. So I think that there is an element of certain messaging smuggled into the movie that feels a little bit like heavy-handed in that respect, but maybe that went over most people's head. And I think that comes with making who were the Atlanteans in the comics, and Namor, making them like Mayan or ancient Mexican kind of thing. When you land it that specific to a cultural group, it feels like the real world is bleeding in. And I think that was handled well in the first Black Panther, because obviously Killmonger represents Black Americans and some of the resentments to their African ancestors, and you kind of get that. But it was done a bit more subtly and a bit more, I think, cleverly, if that makes sense. Where this felt a little bit preachy in a way. I could be wrong. I also felt that M'Baku was wasted. He's a very strong character, a fan favorite. Again, Winston Duke performed well in it, but was just not utilized more than as a sideman, almost just an ally. Because this film could have been called The Woman King 2, basically. There was a real emphasis on strong women, strong black women, which I think is great, but it seemed at the expense of guys. There wasn't really a strong black male character. There was a strong black male vacuum. Even M'Baku is strong in a sense that he's like an ally to the female leaders. He doesn't really have much agency except for being a strong, we will support you, sister. There wasn't really, especially when you've got the main hero of the franchise who's now gone, being a strong, masculine, positive black role model, especially for little boys and girls. Not having a male character just felt who you could have used M'Baku in a way where he felt like he was a bit more on a level rather than a kind of support system, a support mechanism. Again, Shuri, it was difficult to buy her as a Black Panther, both in her very slender, slight physique and just in her mannerism. And she didn't feel like she was somebody who would be formidable, even with the special herb. Her power was her mind and her progressivism. So, yeah, I think there's a lot that didn't work for me. I did feel like, on a positive, strong black female performances and characters. But it felt there was elements that seemed like they were great on paper, like, yeah, that's good, boom, but just fell flat for me in execution. And you know, when you feel like you should go, yay, you should support something because of its messaging, but you're not actually enjoying it. It felt a bit like that. So you don't want to be seen. I can imagine it being very difficult for some people to critique this movie because it's padded with the in honorarium to Chadwick Boseman, which again is deserved. And also then padded by the representation of Black and now Hispanic leading cast, which is progressive. But it could end up being in a bit of a Ghostbusters scenario, you know, the remake with the all women, where if you didn't like this movie and you were quite vocal with your criticisms, you could be accused of being against progress and against representation. So it's kind of padded, almost critic-proof in that way. And I can imagine there being critics who have overpraised the movie because of those same factors. But I'm going to keep it real, man. Is it a bad movie? No, it's watchable. Is it a disappointment? Absolutely. Is it the movie that I was hoping for? Completely not. Do I think they should have recast T'Challa? Yes, I think that they should have taken time out to grieve, come up with a stronger story. Even if you did the same story with the Tolakanians or whatever, Namor's people, having a Black Panther would have been very, very powerful in that, a T'Challa one. And of course, there's doors opened at the end of the movie for the future. So I've not been impressed with Phase 4 so far. This movie hasn't restored the hope in the franchise. And I haven't even mentioned Riri Williams' Ironheart or Iron Knockoff. She was obviously a comic relief character, a more Black American, hey man, reacting a bit fish out of water moments, but then tough and smarter than everybody in the MCU we've seen to date kind of thing, but she's less than 20 years old. I know she's from the comics, but it's like, I felt she was shoehorned in because she's going to have a Disney Plus spin-off show. And obviously they want to sort of build up the roster of diverse characters in the MCU to make up for, you know, all the white men in the Avengers, which I had no problem with, by the way. So yeah, out of 10, I would give Wakanda Forever a 6 to a 6.5. And I would probably put it on Disney Plus for the kids if they don't go and see it before then. But I would probably be on my laptop doing something whilst it's on and just take a look for the moments, you know what I mean? Have a look at the key action sequences and go back to what I'm doing. Oh, I forgot to mention the Peter Nyong'o because she's hardly in the movie. When she's in it, she's a good actress, but I think the conceit of her character is a plot point that, to me, and she's in some of the scenes that just felt like it was plodding and trying to do the whole espionage thing. It just fell flat. So I would visit Wakanda again, but I'd want to know what the itinerary was beforehand, and I'd want to be able to duck out quickly if I found my stay was not up to standard. So I hope you've enjoyed my review. Again, please don't take my black card away. Please give it back so I can... I promise I will give Wakanda, the Black Panther Part 3 a chance. But in the meantime, I'll just watch the first one again on rerun. And I think we can all agree that Chadwick Boseman was an amazing T'Challa Black Panther. And may he continually rest in peace. We'll always have that movie and his appearances in the other MCU films. And yeah, let's bring on Ant-Man 3. Thanks for watching. Please comment and subscribe and like, and let me know your thoughts, what you thought of the movie, and keep it civil, but I give you complete permission to disagree with me. Let's get into it.